Good morning in Europe and good afternoon, namaste in Asia. Welcome to a very special session on Ukraine's relations with South Asia in the context of Russia-Ukraine war, which is jointly organized by Civil Diplomacy Foundation and Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement. Before I start, let me briefly introduce NICE. Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement is a think tank based in Kathmandu. It is an independent, apolitical, and non-partisan research institute registered under Companies Act of 2006 of Nepal. We undertake independent research and activities on issues of international relations, foreign policy, security studies, and issues of development. Anastasia would be talking about Civil Diplomacy Foundation, but before I hand over to her, I'd like to briefly touch upon South Asia, on how South Asia see Ukraine crisis and the role of Nepal. We all are aware that Nepal voted in favor of UN resolution to deplore Russian invasion of Ukraine. China and India at that time, two of Nepal's big neighbors, abstained. It was surprising for many of us here, as it could strongly stand unlike its strong neighbors. Nepal had taken similar strong stand in support of Israel in 1959-60, unlike two of their big neighbors. So it's not unique or for the first time that Nepal stood in support of democracy, in support of invasion, in support of small countries like Ukraine, or in support of rule of law. So as I said, that India abstained because it wants to maintain a balance between the Western Bloc led by US and Russia, since India has a strategic partner on both the sides. And it is not new because India has done that in several times in the past. Russia was one of the major players in India's relations at the time. But moreover, with time, what has happened is that the countries of South Asia and India has started coming in support of Ukraine on several issues. We all know that China too abstained, and if you look at South Asia, we see that geopolitical shift because of small states have voted in favor of and big abstain, which was surprising. Like for example, Nepal, Bhutan, Maldives, and Afghanistan voted in favor. India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh abstained from that. So that is one. We all know that the crisis of Ukraine is a cause of failure of great power diplomacy, and this failure has have a global impact. The global economy is affected, and still many countries has not been able to recover fully. Ukraine war was set back on democracy, as I said. So it's going to impact armed control, and this can lead to more polarization of global power. So the impact of this is global. Though we are talking today, we are focusing more on how Ukraine and Russia and South Asia are engaging, but we can see the impact is global, and the countries around the region are working on that. So it is in this context we are having today's discussion, which is Ukraine's engagement in South Asia. We have four experts, which you all are aware. We'll be introducing them. But before that, I'd like to invite Anastasia to take over. Over to you, Anastasia.
Okay, so I'm also co-host of today's meeting. So my name is Anastasia Chulenko. Currently, I'm taking the position of project manager in the international charitable organization Civil Diplomacy Foundation. That is a public authority designed to use public communications channels to defend and promote the realization of Ukrainian national interests all over the world. Basically, our general aim, similar to NICE, is to active involvement of civil society, expert society, some politicians, in the theoretical and practical development and implementation of Ukraine foreign policy. Also at the NICE, we make some analytical research. We conduct several meetings with other think tanks and public authority organizations all over the world. Currently, Civil Diplomacy Foundations is concentrated in the Asian regions, and we conducted several. Excuse me, it demands to prove the language of my speaking. So. We conducted several roundtables devoted to the relationship between Ukraine and China, between Ukraine and the countries in the Southern Eastern Asia. And currently, today, we decided to put more our attention to the relationships with the countries of South Asia. And that basically over the past 30 years, the bilateral relations with those countries between Ukraine, India, Nepal, and Bangladesh, they have had their highs and lows. And today, understanding the necessity to diversify our political and diplomatical activity, we decided not to lose the perspectives of the development of such relationships, bilateral, multilateral, with the regions, with some specific countries. Moreover, Ukraine and India and other South Asian countries, we had quite productive and fruitful cooperation before in terms of, for instance, economic and trade. India, for instance, was one of the top expert trade partner of the Ukraine in 2022, and this is very important to understand as a perspective for the further development of our relationships, despite other political facts. So we have to concentrate more on positive trends. Also, we had some specific cooperation in the military technical cooperation, the even aerospace industry. That is not of the higher actuality today, but I do believe that everything is possible to renovate and revitalize in terms of bilateral and multilateral relationships. Also, I know that many students Indian even currently go on studying in Ukraine. So this is a good point for developing our soft power. And this is also about Nepal and Bangladesh students. So I hope for mutual cooperation and exchange for the time. Maybe I hope after the end of the war. So today we also, as Dr. Jaiswal mentioned, we have 4 experts, two from Ukraine and 2 from India. Shall I introduce our experts right now or after your?
Yes.
Right now. Okay. So we have today our 2 experts, 2 beautiful women, 2 very beautiful, smart women. Alina Gritsenko. She is a chief consultant in the National Institute for Strategic Studies. She holds Master Economy in the International Relations from Taras Shevchenko National University of Kyiv. She is also author of analytical articles for the UA Analytical, European Pravda, Хвиля UA, Focus UA, Дзеркало Тижня, NLB UA, and etc., etc. Alina Gritsenko's research interests are national security and foreign policy analysis, international security, and especially Asia-Pacific international relations. Our second honorable expert, this is Professor Elena Bardilovska, a famous Indologist, candidate of historical science, doctor of political sciences, leading research fellow in the International Institute for Strategic Studies, associate professor of the Department of the Languages and Literature of the Near and Middle East, and research interests in the Indian civilization, Indian culture and history, South Asia in world politics. And Elena also is the author and co-author of several monographs and many scientific articles on the topic of your interests. So I think, Dr. Jaiswal, the floor is yours.
Maybe you can invite.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm very glad then to give the first floor to Professor Elena Bardilovska for her report devoted to our topic today. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And what about the time limits? May I ask you?
10
Yeah,
to
sure.
12 or maximum 15 minutes.
Okay, I will try my best. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here with you. Thank you very much to organizers of this event. It is personally very important for me, as it was said, South Asia, India in particular, and South Asia at large. It's a sphere of my scientific interest. It's an area of my love, let's say. And it's very important for me to get any chance to speak to people from South Asia, especially now when we have such a specific situation in Ukraine. And when we have such a huge problem, I would say, the lack of information about Ukraine in South Asia. And I hope that this event will help us to cover this lack of knowledge, let's say. And also, we have to admit, unfortunately, that there is one problem which is connected to Ukraine directly. It is our mistake that we lost some good opportunities to have good relationship with countries of South Asia, because Ukraine during the period of independence was too Eurocentric, let's say. It is understandable. We are in the center of Europe and our interests are here in Europe, but still we did not pay enough attention to the countries of the so-called global South and South Asia as well, as a part of this huge amount of countries, because of many reasons, because of lack of money, specialists, and sometimes interest. Still, South Asia was always an area of Ukrainian interest, and we provided a lot of good projects and quite good cooperation with countries of South Asia. As it was mentioned by Anastasia, we had quite good cooperation in the sphere of education. Before the war, we had only from India, we had around 18,000 students. But also we had students from Bangladesh, from Pakistan, from other countries. And even now, when Ukraine is the state at war, and we are really asking for the support in many ways, not only humanitarian or something like this. At the same time, we have something to propose as well, even now, because even at war, Ukraine is one of the top 10 exporters of food, and it is still a guarantor of food security in the world, even at war. And also we're looking forward for the period of renovation after the war will be finished. We still have something to propose in the sphere of science and education. And of course, IT, airspace, military cooperation, which was mentioned about. But one more thing which is very important in respect with what said by Dr. Pramod, we are very keen to have friends in the reforming of the institutions of global governance, reforming of the United Nations. And with this regard, I hope we can find some support from South Asian countries. Still, to ensure this collaboration, we have to understand each other better. This is the main thing which we are working on right now, against Russian propaganda, against false narratives. I will come to them a little bit later, but right now I would like to notice that the war in Ukraine is not such a distant war as sometimes looks like. It's not an isolated issue, because it is the war against the Russian war against Ukraine. It's the war against justice, we believe, right? And also it already affected many countries and South Asian countries as well in a very bad ways. And we believe that in the global village, as we call the world right now, there is no us and you. There is still one world and one family and one future, as it was the slogan of G20 presidency of India, under this very famous concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one world, one family. We believe it is like this, and the war in Ukraine just proved this. And now let's come to the countries of South Asia, which mostly provide the so-called neutrality as per the war of Russia against Ukraine. But I would like to mention that neutrality could be very, very different, and it could be demonstrated in different ways. And I will start with the appreciation of Nepal's position. It was mentioned by Dr. Pramod that during the very important voting in the United Nations, Nepal supported Ukraine, supported not only Ukraine, but supported the justice, let's say. Nepal has denounced Moscow's so-called special military operation and approved most of the United Nations resolutions against Russia. Different countries demonstrated different positions, not only in voting, but if we are discussing this issue right now, let's mention then Bangladesh has twice supported the United Nations. Sri Lanka always refused to take the sides, the same like India, almost always. Since 2014, India still voted for Russian position once. Then we have Pakistan. It's very interesting approach because it's the most controversial, let's say. Pakistan is constantly abstained on this issue, but at the same time, you know from the news that Pakistani Pakistani army reportedly supplied ammunition to Ukraine via third countries, not directly. But last days we had some news about the same position of India, which is also supposed to send some ammunition via different countries to Ukraine. Let's see. It is still in the news. We don't know how it happened. It will happen or not. Let's see. So we can say that neutrality is quite sensitive issue right now, and many of Ukrainian supporters believe that it is not a correct position. It's a bit outdated, but we can't pass the countries to take some sides. We understand that neutrality is the official position of foreign policy of many countries in South Asia as well. Still, we got a lot of humanitarian support from different countries of South Asia, which is also very much appreciated. And the next question to be discussed, next point to be discussed here is that it is very important to use proper names for what is going in Ukraine. You know, during the India's presidency, for example, India used the names like Ukrainian conflict or Ukrainian crisis. We do not agree with this definition because it is definitely a war, Russian war against Ukraine, because we do not have any crisis inside Ukraine. And the war, when it was started, it was absolutely unprovoked aggression of Russia against Ukraine. This is just the fact. Yes, the Europe was the first continent hardly affected by this war. And that's why many European countries, they stayed aside with Ukraine, and they would like to support in different ways to support Ukraine because they believe it is a moral ability and responsibility to do this. We do not force countries, as I said, to have some side, one side or another, but we believe that to be neutral sometimes is not good because it means that you are in the position with both the victim, yes, and the aggressor, which is just not good. We have already a lot of consequences of this war, like refugees crisis inside Ukraine, and also we have right now more than 6 million Ukrainians outside Ukraine, unfortunately, for the first time in our history. We have the breakout of logistics. We know that many chains of food delivery are damaged right now, especially in Black Sea. And Black Sea itself is no more a peaceful sea. We have a lot of problems in our environment. And we have a lot of problems inside society right now. It's very difficult time for us, and that's why we appreciate any support, not only from the governmental official side, but just from the people, from different NGOs, different organizations, and we got this support from many countries. For us, it is important to explain our position because Russian Federation is violating every possible law right now. International law, bilateral agreements we had previously between Russia and Ukraine. It's violated our territorial integrity, and that's why we just would like to tell the truth about this war and want people to understand what does it mean to stop the war. We don't want to stop this war somehow. We have to win this war. Otherwise, we will have another frozen conflict which we already had before. That's why we are talking about 10 years, not 2 years of the war. We have only 2 years of full-scale invasion, but the war started in 2014 with the Crimean occupation. And that's why we proposed the so-called Ukrainian peace formula, which was presented by our president for the first time in G20 summit in Bali in 2022, with 10 points of how to win this war and how to finish it with all the justice, with the punishment, with many things which can provide the justification and will stop Russia and other aggressive states from another conflict in global area, not only in Europe. For that, we have to fight Russian propaganda. Frankly speaking, we know that it is very popular still in South Asia. And a lot of false narratives via media, then Russian embassies, consulates, agencies, cultural and pseudo-cultural organizations, they are doing their thing throughout South Asia. One of them, just a few examples I will give you, that Russia is the best friend of all South Asian countries because it is a successor of the Soviet Union, and it provided a huge support for these countries during the Soviet period, and they are continuing to do that with supplying cheap oil and something else. But this is just not true, because even during the Soviet time, the support which came from the Soviet Union to the South Asian countries, for example, to India, 60–70% of this support came from Ukraine. Yes, it was not independent Ukraine, but there were Ukrainian engineers, professors who made a lot of things with providing this support, constructing the factories, establishing the institutes of engineering and the universities and so on. One more thing is that Russia is anti-colonial power, that as the Soviet Union, it was also always fighting for the countries of the so-called third world and supported these countries. Again, it's just not true, because Russia is the same colonial power, and Russia should be treated as colonial power, and the main aim of this war in Ukraine is the same wars in post-Soviet space, is the restoration of empire. Does not matter how to call it, Russian Empire, the Soviet Union, or something else, Russian world, whatever. It's just the imperial politics and the same kind of colonial politics. And one more example is the so-called fight for multipolarity, which is Russia tried to provide for the organizations like BRICS, like Shanghai Cooperation Organizations, with the anti-Western slogans. But again, we know that, for example, India, with its brilliant example of neutrality, always tried to be in the West and also in Russia, and to have good relationship with the United States and also Asian countries. So it just does not work. Multipolarity does not mean anti-Western policy, 100%, right? The last narrative I would like to mention here shortly is the so-called Russian stand for different values. What kind of different values they will propose you? They said, oh, you know, every civilization has its own mentality, culture. It's okay. We have nothing against it. You should have your own culture and mentality, identity, of course, but it does not mean that you will have another values than human rights values. And the biggest value in this world is the human life, right? What we are talking about when Russia has stolen 1,000 of Ukrainian children during this war. What kind of value is this? May I ask you? So it's just quite stupid narratives. The last one is the fight against the nationalists in Ukraine. You know, when Putin announced this so-called special military operation, he said that he will fight against nationalism in Ukraine. Then again, may I ask you why? What is wrong here? Why nationalism was very good for South Asian countries, for example, and it's bad for Ukraine? Why nationalism actually took the liberty, the independence for India, for example? Why we can't use nationalism as a tool for our identity, our culture, our history? Yes, we are nationalists in that sense of the view, but I don't think it is a bad and something which somebody can deny us to be, right? Ukraine is a very peaceful nation, and you know, we never planned this war because we understand what is our neighbor, what is our enemy. The nuclear power with a huge territory, with massive democratic resources. We never planned this war, we never wanted this war. And you know what they are doing right now? They are just demonstrated they can do whatever they want. Look at Navalny death at prison, for example. This is a clear message that Russia is a disruptor of the international law, and that's why, yes, Ukraine is searching the support from different countries. And it was exactly the main topic of the visit of our Vice Foreign Minister, Irina Borovets, to India. And I will not mention all the events she had, but one should be mentioned here is the famous Raisina dialogue in Delhi, a very famous forum, and for the first time ever, Ukraine participated in this forum in such a high level, and Irina Borovets took part in the discussion called Back to the Future, a New Era of Conflict in Europe. It was only 1 hour discussion of Ukrainian war, which is not enough, of course, but still she has mentioned all these main issues I mentioned here, and she said that really it's not 2 years, but 10 years of the fighting, and we can't stop fighting because there will be no us in this case. There will be no Ukraine. Ukraine is still fighting, and for many countries, it's still a kind of miracle how we can do it. Yes, we got some support with weapons and ammunition from our Western partners, but still, it's a very strong fighting resilience because of our people. Because we don't want to be a part of Russian world, Russian Empire, Soviet Empire, whatever, how they will call it. We want our independence, which we enjoyed for more than 30 years, and we were fighting for it previously for many, many centuries, let's to be precise. And our Vice Foreign Minister again mentioned this peace formula. Because it's very important for us to have more people from many countries. We have friends not only in the West, we believe, we have partners everywhere, and we try to have these partners in the discussions. We already provided 4 special summits for national advisors on security and foreign policy, starting with only 15 people in Copenhagen in July last year. Then the number was growing every time. There were summits also in Jeddah, in Malta, and this year in Davos in Switzerland, we had 81 countries. So it is decided that this Global Peace Summit will be organized in Switzerland again this year, and we are inviting, as our Vice Minister said, all peace-loving nations to participate in it, because it's really very important to understand how to stop this war and how to win it. And finally, 1 more minute I will take to come to a very sensitive question, but I think it is important to mention it here. I am speaking about the nationalities from South Asia who are illegally have been hired by Russia for this war. Many of them came from Nepal, unfortunately, thousands of them, and at least 14 of them have been killed at these battles. I know that they did not plan to go to the battlefield, and Russia lies as always. They promised good salary, some special documents, whatever. They said that for Indians, for example, they said that they will be servants in some special units, and they never mentioned that they will be sent to the front line. So we have this issue right now, and we know that both the governments of Nepal and India, they asked Russia to stop all these contracts and to send these people back to the countries, and unfortunately to send them the bodies of the people who have been killed. So once again, I will finish with the statement that we never planned this war. We never wanted people from South Asia to be killed in this front line. Why? Because they came to kill us because Russia promised something to them. It's something which has to be stopped immediately. And that's why we are talking about the truth. We are talking about the things which are very important, not only for Ukraine, but for the justice, I believe. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Olena, for a very comprehensive and enlightening remarks. May I now invite Rudranil Ghosh to make his remarks. Mr. Ghosh is currently working for the editorial page of the Times of India, which is India's largest English daily, and he's working also as a senior assistant editor. His job profile includes analyzing the day's hot-button political, social, and foreign affairs issues to produce editorials that are read by millions in India and abroad. His core subject is international relations, having authored several signed articles on India's ties with important foreign partners. He covered the general election in Morocco in the wake of Arab Spring movement in 2011 and has interviewed several high-profile personalities, including former president of Bangladesh, Hussein Mohammed Irsad, former Prime Minister of Vietnam, Nguyen Xuan Phuc, noted American rights activist Jesse Jackson, mayor of Kiev, and former boxing legend Vitaly Klitschko, and first Deputy Foreign Minister of Ukraine, Emini Zaprova, and former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. He maintains a widely reading official blog on the Times of India website called Talking Turkey, which is a repository of no-frills analysis of India and global issues. Mr. Ghosh is a BA honors degree in history and a postgraduate diploma in journalism and master's degree in international relations. Mr. Ghosh, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Jaiswal, for that introduction. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you once again for inviting me in this forum. I would like to begin my intervention by looking at what made India take its somewhat neutral position to the war in Ukraine, because this is very important to analyze. And it's only by analyzing why India chose to take this position that we can chart a way forward. So essentially, there are three aspects to it. One is strategic. The second is legacy issues. The third is your certain myths that have endured not only within the Indian leadership, but rather the general population of India. So let me quickly come to the strategic aspect as to why India chose to take a neutral position on this war, and how actually slowly we are realizing that these positions, these long held positions that we have had, are slowly coming undone. So firstly, on the strategic front, India has always had a non-aligned foreign policy that has been the basis of our foreign policy for decades. Today, with the current leadership in India, that non-aligned policy has transformed into a multi-aligned policy. So the official position is that we will engage with everyone, irrespective of any camps or any organizations, and we will keep our foreign policy largely independent, or in fact as independent as possible. within that rubric, we have to see the relationship between India and Russia. Russia has been, let's say, a partner for India for many, many years. And this partnership has been essentially premised on the defense relationship that India and Russia share. Now, this defense relationship is extensive. Large parts of the Indian military is, materially supported by Russian weapons platforms. There are ongoing projects, there are ongoing maintenance supply chains. So Russia continues to be an essential supplier of defense equipment for India, although in the last decade or so, India has been diversifying its defense basket, and we are looking at other suppliers, particularly from the West. This is slowly changing, and but it will take a lot of time to sort of reduce our overwhelming dependence on Russian defense equipment. But the factor which is undermining this strategic relationship between India and Russia is China. After the beginning of the full-scale invasion in 2022, China and Russia embarked on a no-limits friendship, a no-limits partnership. They have become closer than ever. The strategic, complementarity between China and Russia today are tremendous. They are cooperating in almost every field, whether it's defense, whether it's international diplomacy, whether it's materially supporting Russia. China is materially supporting Russia. It's providing economic support to Russia. The economic relationship between China and Russia is going from strength to strength. I believe bilateral trade is soon going to touch $200 billion. So this relationship between China and Russia, who today are practically inseparable, is creating a big problem for India. And therefore, it is forcing, a relook at the India-Russia relationship. And it's a fact that this China-Russia relationship will remain strong for the foreseeable future, forcing New Delhi to recalculate its strategic partnership with Russia. So this is an ongoing process. The second thing that I would like to come to is the legacy factor. As mentioned by my previous speaker here, that the USSR continues to loom large in the mindset of the Indian people, and this despite 30 years of the breakup of the USSR. But the fact is that people in India, and I'm talking about ordinary people, like teachers, professors, people who have nothing to do with international politics, they still fondly remember the USSR, and they may perhaps were at one point of time they did visit Moscow for their training, their technical training, teachers training, whatever. So they continue to retain those fond memories for the USSR. So this is again another, I think, push factor for the India-Russia relationship, because Russia has essentially hijacked the legacy of the USSR. Now, the interesting part here is that people often forget, or rather they completely choose to ignore the fact that Ukraine was very much a part of the USSR. It was part of the Soviet Union, and in fact, many of the Soviet leaders were from Ukraine. Many of the technical cooperation that India had with the Soviet Union was actually with the Ukrainian Socialist Republic, Soviet Socialist Republic. So this is something that people conveniently forget, or they kind of misremember. And the third part, which is again driving this India-Russia partnership today, are certain myths. Now, the myths essentially center around the personality of Russian President Putin. Now, it is a fact that, given the wave of right-wing politics across the world, and India hasn't been immune to this wave, the cult of the strongman leader is very, very attractive in many, many circles. And this is also true for India. In many circles in India, Putin is seen as a macho strongman who takes decisive action. And in fact, the way he dealt with terrorism, particularly in places like Chechnya, is in fact eulogized by these circles in India. There is this sense that India, to deal with terrorism, should have taken that kind of strong action that Putin had taken in Chechnya. It's a different matter that the war in Chechnya was absolutely horrible. It violated human rights, but Putin was seen as, or continues to be seen as, a man of action, and therefore there is this cult of Putin that continues to endure in many circles in India. Okay, but the like I said, these three factors, which essentially are bolstering the India-Russia relationship, are slowly coming undone. Number one, China today is India's biggest strategic rival. Since the Galwan Valley clashes between India and China in 2020, relations between India and China has slowly deteriorated. And in fact, to the point that today our relationship with China is not normal. This is something that our Foreign Minister Jaishankar has also stated, that it is not normal. And unless China changes things, which is difficult to see at this point, relations are not expected to go back to normality. So we have to take it for granted that in the foreseeable future, China and Russia will essentially be one entity. It will be a combined entity, and China is propping up Russia to play the role of a disruptor against the US because of the US-China strategic rivalry, and also play the role of a disruptor in China's areas of interest, which includes South Asia. So that is the only reason why China is propping up Russia throughout the course of the Ukraine war. So this is something slowly that is percolating, down the strategic circles of India, and India is slowly sort of trying to recalibrate its position vis-a-vis Russia, given that Russia and China today are strategically inseparable. Coming to the legacy issues. Now again, there is a huge gulf in understanding between India and South Asia, and countries like the USSR, the countries that came out of the USSR, including Ukraine and the other republics that broke away. In fact, this is a two-way. This needs to be a two-way street, because as much as of a knowledge deficit that India and South Asia has about Ukraine, Ukraine and the former Soviet republics also have a similar knowledge deficit for India, and that needs to be slowly addressed. It is being slowly addressed, but the process is very, very slow. It needs to be speeded up. It needs to be speeded up, and particularly among the youth of the two sides. The youth need to get involved, because you see the older generation in India, for example, as I mentioned, they continue to have certain latent warm memories of the Soviet Union, and they are difficult to change. So therefore, the focus should be on the youth, and the youth connect between Ukraine and India, and India, and even other republics, former Soviet republics that came out of the USSR. So and the myth about the strongman allure of Putin again is slowly framed, because some of the decisions that Putin has taken during the course of the war have been appalling. I mean, the massacre at Bakhmut, the massacre in Mariupol, they have been absolutely appalling, and those images are slowly filtering out into the Indian population and the Indian leadership, and they are looking at this and they are rethinking that, is Putin, the hero figure that we all thought he was. Perhaps he's not so much of a hero, but rather he's a villain here. you know it's also a fact that the way the Russia has carried out this so-called special military operation, which is nothing but a euphemism for naked aggression and invasion, it has also led to a reputational loss for Russia. Because they have been constantly changing their narrative. They first said that this is a special military operation to take care of Ukrainian fascists, nationalists. Then they quickly changed that narrative and said, no, we are now fighting for our fallen soldiers who have been wounded in this war. Then they have been talking about how we are actually fighting the larger West, and it's the conspiracy. There's a conspiracy, Western conspiracy against Russia. So all these narratives, like changing narratives, are slow. People are starting to see through them. They're starting to see through them, and they're starting to question the the sanity of the Russian leadership and the rationality of the Russian leadership. So these the factors which essentially were driving the India-Russia partnership are slowly being recalibrated here, and they need to be sped up. Okay, and the way forward is, as I said, is to target the youth. There is a lot that we can learn from each other. There can be cooperation in areas such as music. There can be cooperation in areas such as sport. Ukraine has a great sporting history and culture. There have been great sports persons who have come out of Ukraine. Such as in boxing, you've had the Klitschko brothers. You've had Alexander Usyk. Football, Andrei Shevchenko. These are known figures in sporting circles. So so it's something that can be built on between India and Ukraine to hasten the process of people to people collaboration. Yoga is very, very important. India today takes huge pride in its tradition of yoga. It wants to export yoga to every corner of the world. Ukraine, I believe, has a tradition of yoga as well. There are many yoga practitioners in Ukraine, which is actually helping them in the course of the war to cope with the mental agony and the physical agony of this war. So yoga is another very good bridge between India and Ukraine, and it should be encouraged. Business. Now, my co-panelist here, Armi Channa, is going to speak about business in more detail. But Ukraine is going to be a member of EU and a future member in NATO. So essentially, Ukraine can be the gateway for Indian businesses to the European Union. And so there are huge business opportunities, lying, waiting to be tapped in Ukraine. Of course, the war, imposes certain constraints, but that should not prevent us from exploring these possibilities. Ukraine, because of the war, has undergone massive, unimaginable destruction. A lot will be required, to rebuild Ukraine and Ukrainian infrastructure. This is somewhere that Indian businesses should be really interested, and they need to grab this opportunity, because it's a huge opportunity for Indian businesses to participate in the reconstruction of Ukraine, and this should be encouraged. Finally, I want to conclude by dwelling on why should we do this. Why should India and South Asia boost relations with Ukraine and other former Soviet republics? The fact is that the world today is changing. Russia is no longer what it used to be. Russia, given the sanctions that it is having to endure, the Western sanctions it is having to endure, given the exodus of Russian people who have left Russia since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, given the restructuring going on in the Russian economy, Russia, for the foreseeable future, will be a diminished nation. It will be a diminished nation, and it will, in fact, be a vassal of China. There is a strong possibility that it will just end up being a vassal of China. So therefore, there is a need to recalibrate our relations with Russia at this moment, because the world is changing. Ukraine is going to be part of EU, is going to be part of NATO. We need to be on the right side of history here, and and take our relationship forward and create a new chapter in relations between South Asia and Ukraine. With that, I would like to rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gorsh, for such comprehensive review that full of different positive trends for developing our cooperation. And in such terms, I would like to give a floor to our next expert, Alina Hrytsenko, that will go on this topic. Alina, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, allow me to express my gratitude for the opportunity to address you today in this discussion. And I would like to shed some light, so to speak, on a topic of Ukraine's politics in South Asia, and particularly of the strategy of promoting Ukraine's interest in the region. So when we discuss South Asia, we envision a region pulsating with diversity, history, and vibrant political landscapes. And South Asia obviously plays a pivotal role in the global arena, particularly in terms of geopolitics and trade and cultural exchange, because home to over 1 billion people, it represents a vast market and hub of economic activity. And furthermore, South Asia serves as a crucial geopolitical crossroads linking the continents of Asia, Europe, and Africa, and its strategic location makes it a focal point for international diplomacy and cooperation. And in recent years, Ukraine has recognized the paramount importance of engaging with South Asia as a part of so-called Global South on multiple fronts, be it economic, diplomatic, or cultural, and while seeking to diversify its diplomatic and economic ties, engaging with South Asian countries presents a wealth of opportunities for Ukraine. Whether it's forging partnership in sectors like technology, agriculture, or renewable energy, or enhancing cultural exchanges and people-to-people connections, Ukraine stands to benefit significantly from deeper engagement with South Asia. Moreover, in an increasingly interconnected world, collaboration with South Asian nations can bolster Ukraine's position on the global stage, and by aligning with like-minded countries on issues of mutual concern, Ukraine can amplify its voice and influence on different international fora. And as a nation situated at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, Ukraine understands the significance of fostering robust ties with the countries of South Asia, which serve as gateways to the broader Asian continent. And when we delve into these strategies through which Ukraine could potentially advance its interest with the nations in the region, it could be first and foremost diplomatic engagement, obviously, because diplomacy forms the cornerstone of international relations, and Ukraine has to prioritize sustained dialogue and engagement with the governments and key stakeholders of South Asian nations. And of course, this entails regular high-level meetings, high-level visits, diplomatic exchange, and participations in multilateral fora, and the visit of Irina Borovets to Orsina Dialogue is one of the great examples for that. Secondly, it is noteworthy to mention economic collaboration. Economic ties serve as a catalyst for deeper bilateral relations, and Ukraine possesses a diverse range of industries and expertise that could complement the economic development goals of South Asian countries. And thirdly, humanitarian assistance is also important. Humanitarian crises often transcend borders and require collective responses, and Ukraine can demonstrate solidarity with South Asian nations by providing humanitarian aid during times of need, whether in response to natural disasters, health emergencies, or humanitarian crises. Such gestures of goodwill resonate deeply and strengthen bilateral relations. And paradoxically, as it may sound, Ukraine isn't merely a victim of the war who needs resources, but also a country capable of extending a helping hand to others in times of crisis, offering assistance not only with resilience, but also with humanitarian aid. And Ukraine stands as at a pivotal juncture with this engagement with South Asia by adopting a multifaceted approach encompassing diplomacy, economic culture, humanitarianism, and all the things I have mentioned already, and potentially strategic partnership with some of the countries of the region. Ukraine could effectively advance its interest in South Asia. And in crafting Ukraine's strategy in South Asia, it is imperative to adopt a nuanced and meticulous and bilateral approach, while acknowledging the prominence and complexity of India and Pakistan as major nuclear powers. It is equally essential to recognize the unique dynamics at play with the smaller states of the region, while India and Pakistan, as significant stakeholders in regional geopolitics, demand a specialized approach characterized by diplomatic finesse and strategic engagement, given their nuclear capabilities and historical tension. So Ukraine must navigate a delicate balance between these two countries while fostering dialogue and cooperation and respecting the sovereignty and security concerns. At the same time, building trust and cultivating multifaceted relationships with both nations can pave the way for constructive dialogue with both actors and contribute to regional security, potentially. Conversely, these smaller states of South Asia warrant a distinct approach tailored to the specific needs and aspirations. While most geopolitical commentators focus on the new bipolar world with the rise of China, with the confrontation of China between China and the US, or even a multipolar world of many Eastern and Western players, the influence and the value of smaller countries is often overlooked. And recognizing their potential, as well as vulnerabilities, Ukraine could offer targeted assistance and cooperation initiatives aimed at capacity building and economic development. And by engaging with these nations, on nations such as trade, infrastructure, and sustainable development, Ukraine could forge mutually beneficial partnership. If we take Nepal, for example, the cooperation between Ukraine and Nepal, well, perhaps not as widely publicized as some other international partnerships, it holds potential across various sectors. Firstly, in terms of diplomatic relations, Ukraine and Nepal maintain friendly ties. Although the diplomatic interaction may not be as frequent or extensive as with some other nations, the existence of diplomatic channels provides a foundation for further collaboration. And it's important to acknowledge that while the current level of cooperation between the two countries may be modest, there exists a foundation upon which to build and expand bilateral relations, as both nations still continue to explore opportunities for collaboration and mutual benefit. Economically, there are opportunities for cooperation, particularly in sectors such as agriculture. Ukraine possesses advanced agricultural technologies and expertise that could greatly benefit Nepal's agrarian economy, heavily reliant on traditional farming methods. Ukraine is known for its modern farming machinery, including harvesters and irrigation systems, which can improve efficiency and productivity in Nepal's agricultural sector. And Ukraine is also known for its expertise in the production and application of agrochemicals and fertilizers, and collaborating with Ukrainian companies in this area can provide Nepal with access to high-quality fertilizers and pesticides, as well as advanced techniques for soil management and crop protection. This can be particularly beneficial for Nepal's smallholder farmers, helping them improve soil fertility, pest control, and ultimately increase their income, since family farming is a dominant practice of food production in Nepal. Around 70% of households are involved directly or indirectly in family farming. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, most of the farmers of Nepal are smallholder farmers, with a bit more than 52% households having less than 0.5 hectare of land holding, and about 70% of land holdings is less than 1.0 hectare size. Ukrainian agricultural practices, including the cultivation of a wide range of crops such as grains, oilseeds, fruits, and vegetables, can help Nepal diversify its agricultural production and reduce dependency on a few staple crops. And moreover, Ukraine's knowledge of modern agricultural techniques such as precision farming and organic farming methods can be shared with Nepali farmers to improve crop yields and sustainability. So Nepal is only one example of how Ukraine could possibly collaborate with smaller states in the South Asian region, but generally, nations of South Asia hold exceptional significance for the implementation of President Zelensky peace formula. So that brings me to the point that South Asia is important in a geopolitical context, particularly in realms of nuclear security, food security, and ecological security, because South Asia is home to two major nuclear powers, India and Pakistan, whose stability and responsible behavior are crucial for global nuclear security. And President Zelensky's peace formula, apart from everything else, emphasizes dialogue, de-escalation, and confidence-building measures to mitigate nuclear risks and promote regional and global stability. When it comes to food security, South Asia faces significant challenges in ensuring food security for its growing population, exacerbated by factors such as climate change, land degradation, water scarcity. And President Zelensky's peace formula underscores the importance of sustainable agricultural practices, technology transfer, and international cooperation to address food insecurity and promote rural development. Ukraine, with its expertise in agriculture and agroecology, could collaborate with South Asian countries to enhance agriculture productivity, improve food distribution systems, and strengthen resilience to climate-related shocks, thereby contributing to food security and poverty alleviation in the region. And thirdly, ecological security, one of the crucial points of the peace formula. South Asia is highly vulnerable to environmental threats, including air and water pollution, deforestation, and natural disasters, which pose significant risks to public health and ecosystems and livelihoods. And President Zelensky's peace formula emphasizes the importance of environmental protection and conservation and sustainable development as integral components of peace-building efforts. Ukraine can support South Asian countries in implementing environmental policies and promoting renewable energy sources and enhancing disaster preparedness and response capabilities, thereby contributing to environmental sustainability and resilience in the region, which emphasizes my point that Ukraine is not simply a victim in this war. In conclusion, the nations of South Asia play a pivotal role in advancing President Zelensky's peace formula, and particularly in the three areas of nuclear, food, and ecological security. And by engaging with South Asian countries in these critical issues and fostering cooperation and dialogue, Ukraine could contribute to building a more peaceful, secure, and prosperous future for the region and globally also. And these steps will be steps towards fostering a positive image and perception of Ukraine within the region, breaking preconceived notions and stereotypes, and countering Russian propaganda, which Dr. Bortilovska spoke about in detail. And by proactively disseminating accurate information and fostering dialogue, Ukraine could aim to elevate understanding not only of Ukraine's identity, but also of the reasons and complexity of the war between Ukraine and Russia. And this heightened awareness will not only empower people in the region with knowledge, but would also serve as a deterrent against external actors such as Russia, who seek to exploit ignorance and vulnerability and to recruit mercenaries from South Asian countries. And in essence, Ukraine's strategy in South Asia must be characterized by adaptability, pragmatism, and a keen understanding of the diverse geopolitical landscape, and by adopting a dual-track approach that accounts for the complexities of both major powers and smaller states, Ukraine could effectively navigate the intricacies of regional dynamics and advance its interest in South Asia. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Edina, for your remarks. May I now invite Armi Channa? Mr. Armi Channa is the founder and president of Indo-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He has worked with different international and national companies such as Roberto Cavalli, Terre Blue, British India, Topshop, and others. From 2001 to 2019, he worked as a first-generation entrepreneur, and from 2021 until now, He's working as international trading and investment expert, where he leverages his international trading experience to promote golden visas in Europe, the US, and the Middle East. Additionally, from 2023 to till date, he's engaged with Indo-Ukraine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, where he established collaboration with MFA, Navoni in Ukraine, and the WTC associations plan to host B2B, B2G, and B2C seminar and webinars with a primary focus on SMEs in both countries and plan to promote Ukrainian language and culture events in India. He has earned his bachelor's degree in business administration and PG diploma in export marketing and finance from Delhi University. Mr. Chana, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Jaiswal. I would like to start by explaining my connection to Ukraine. Basically, it is through trauma. I was an exporter of garments, having my own factory till 2018. In 2018, I suffered a brain stroke due to a carotid artery dissection, which left me in coma for 2 days. And post-coma, I had full right side paralysis, and I also lost my speech. I was in that situation for 2 years. So basically, then once with a miracle, I would say, once I got better, the first country I visited in 21 March was Ukraine. So that is my love for Ukraine, because once I visited the country, I saw how beautiful the country was, how friendly the people were. They knew India through yoga, students, and Bollywood. So basically, I met a lot of people there, and then started thinking about opening a company there, taking the permanent residency of Ukraine. And then when I made the company, the war started. So war starting was a important event for my life, because I was making my dreams as a resident of Ukraine already in my mind, but those dreams were shattered. But then we were invited to the Ukrainian embassy in Delhi for lighting candles by the then ambassador's wife, Mrs. Polika. So I started going, and I continuously went for 6 months. That's when they stopped lighting the candles. And every day I went, it gave me a lot of, I heard stories about resilience, about the bravery, about what they are going through. So it made me connect to the story on a human level. Empathy is what is missing currently in the world right now. And this was very empathetic to listen to those stories of resilience, of survival, and how they are fighting against an enemy which is maybe 20 times the size. So salute to them. So then in November, I had a discussion with the acting ambassador that we should open a bilateral chamber of commerce. He said, I will confirm with the government. And we got the confirmation to open the chamber in January 23. And the chamber was launched officially in April 23 in the embassy. And since then, I've been working mostly on the chamber's activities. I went to Ukraine in October 23 as a speaker on the Crimea platform, which was in Kiev. And I was in Kiev for 15 days. And believe me, hats off to the citizens of Ukraine, because they are living their life despite everything. They are so brave, so resilient. I cannot, and other than that, they are happy. They have happiness, and you can see it on the face. They are happy to be alive. So basically, my mission is to help Ukraine get back on the feet, whatever I can do. The pre-war bilateral business of Ukraine and India was $3.75 billion, which has fallen to around $2.5 billion in the last 1 year, 2 years, sorry. And one moment. So now we are hoping that once the war ends, it will be back to the same level in almost a year. And basically, the percentage of export from Ukraine, 28% of the product was agriculture. From India, 25% of the product was pharmaceuticals. So these two have been mostly hit, because in Ukrainian agro products cannot be shipped due to multiple problems in the Black Sea. But now they are settling, and Ukraine is making a way to, take the ships out. And despite Russia not helping, withdrawing from the Black Sea project, and this is my main focus, because agro product trading is the biggest income of Ukraine, and that income we can help generate by selling their product in the Indian international market. Secondly, we are also doing MOUs with the different city councils. We just signed one MOU with Belz City Council, which is near Lviv. I've just finished a meeting with them, and this city council, we are basically doing multiple projects with them, mostly reconstruction or new construction, green energy, wind energy, or waste management, agro business. And these are the four main projects that we are working on, four directions that we are working on. Plus, other than that, we are also working on human resources needed for the economic activities, including reconstruction. So a key Kiev Economic Institute report suggests that Ukraine will need 450,000 people to reconstruct the country. And they have a huge demographic challenge in front of them because of all the population that has left the country due to the war. So now we are looking to help Ukraine source people from India. Indian companies can start projects in Ukraine and take their own labor from India. I have some big industrial construction companies that are willing to start projects in Ukraine. So see, the thing is, because of my trauma, I realize it is very important when you are down, somebody helps you out to stand up again. So right now, we will do everything that is possible for us to help Ukraine. Ukraine government has just launched an e-residency program. So Indian software entrepreneurs can open a company sitting in India, filing taxes from India, and running a business there. And Ukraine basically before was already a competitor, I would say more like a competitor, but in a certain other fields for all software concentrated industry. And what we are doing is India software professionals are in high demand worldwide. So we can also help the Ukrainian companies which are in software business source or contract job online from for Indian professionals. Further, the unfortunate war has made Ukraine the defense industry one of the most promising area of growth. In 2024, Ukraine is planning to manufacture 700,000 FPV drones. The technology can be used in Indian agriculture industry to use these drones to adapt for use in farms. Ukraine marine drones are very famous because of all the damage they've done to Russian Black Sea fleet, and they are a cost-effective way to monitor our vast coastline. See, Ukraine is about to experience a gold rush, unprecedented in the post-World War II era. The potential of Ukraine is unimaginable. And IUCCI and I personally will need no stone unturned to help Ukraine revive its business, and basically business with benevolence. That is my motto. Every project that we will make, 10% will go to Ukrainian charities to help the disabled or the brain trauma people. That is my promise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Army. We've got an interesting question for you.
Yeah.
This is about in post-war scenario, how do you look at the potential of greater economic engagement between Ukraine and South Asia, especially, for instance, in the tourism sector?
Yeah, I forgot to mention it. Even the tourist sector is a very big sector. The Bollywood is a huge business opportunity. Even the South Indian industry had the Oscar-nominated song shot in front of the presidential palace, which is Natu Natu, and it was shot in Ukraine. Similarly, the industry, the film industry for India can go to Ukraine and shoot in beautiful locations. I've been to Ukraine. I've traveled all over the world. So I think Ukraine is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. My favorite is Italy, but that is beside the point. This whole tourism is a big business, and if the Indian film industry shows Ukraine beauty on screen, then you will have vast majority of Indians wanted to come to Ukraine after the war. So it will bring in immense business opportunities with that.
Thank you so much for the answer.
I hope I'm able to answer your question.
Yeah, I think you answered. So welcome to Ukraine always. We'll be very glad to see everyone. So so basically, I would like to summarize your reviews that having touched the tourism sector, we've touched almost everything, all spheres and fields that can be possible to develop between our regions, our countries. So from the least perspective that were dominant somehow and somewhere till the most perspective in the short term. And basically, my question, maybe you can summarize. This is a question to all experts. What are the most prospective sectors, like in short term? If we are talking about it, like that is of higher actuality now. So basically, today we have the perspectives for development in such fields that are challenges for us. So yeah, Alina Hrytsenko told about the ecological disaster that we have in our country, and it will be possible to cooperate also with the Southern Asian countries. And as I saw before in news, that Ukraine is going to take part in the COP next. And it will be maybe a good opportunity to somehow exchange point of views and exchange several ideas how to figure out several issues with the ecocide and poor ecological system, as we well acknowledge that in Southern Asia, due to the amount of factories, the ecological situation is not so excellent as it could be. So the medical sphere is also quite actual for our country's remains, fortunately. Unfortunately, we have almost lost connections in the sphere of military, so that we had before when we were on the consequences of the Soviet legacy. Mr. Gorsh talked a lot about the informational media campaign that about this also Soviet legacy and the imagination about the Ukraine as a part of these big systems that does not exist anymore. So please, if you may summarize what you consider the most important from your point of view, and what concrete steps should be done right now not to lose our relationships and to develop it anyhow. Maybe Professor Olena.
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, many thanks to dear Army for this great speech and for his efforts to maintain these contacts, and he's coming to Ukraine. We hope to have him as a speaker at the next Ukraine-India forum.
Thank you.
Yes, in March. And people like him, they are real bridges between Ukraine and India and South Asia. And I would say that among all these opportunities which we have been discussing, like education, science, military, whatever, maybe the most important for us right now, which we already started actually, it is the possibility of using traditional South Asian and Indian practices for rehabilitation of our ex-militaries. We already started special programs due to the support of the Embassy of India in Ukraine, in fact, which are about yoga, about Ayurveda, how it could be possible to train people who will treat these persons who will come back from the front line. Also, we have a lot of problems, as you understand, in this situation, not only with post-trauma syndrome, but also people who have been, during this short period of occupation, even in Kiev region, people who saw all these violations, women and even children raped by Russian soldiers, for example, a lot of things which happened to us, unfortunately. And all these practices could help, and really we started to train people which can be presented not in every school, but still in every city and town of Ukraine, who will use these practices with the aim to help people to come to the normal life. I think it's very important.
Thank you so much, Professor. Does anyone more want to share the ideas? So basically we have, Mr. Gorsh. Unfortunately, we cannot hear you well. No. Again, no, unfortunately.
Mr. Ghosh, can you hear me?
I can hear you. No, not so clear.
Yeah, his voice.
Okay, then I'll speak as loudly as I can. Am I audible now?
Maybe you
very...
leave the meeting and then rejoin again.
Okay, let me try that.
Yeah.
And for now, I saw some question in the chat. So, So may you tell, please, contact details, where contact? I think someone told about the contact between our countries, but someone has some doubts about the contact that we have nowadays. Maybe because of the dominance of Russian presence in the region, I don't know. But it doesn't eliminate the existence of contacts.
We still
I think, oh, sorry, please continue, Dr. Ryan.
just mentioned that we still have embassies and everything is working. What is this question? I don't know.
Yeah, I do agree.
I think all the post-Soviet republics missed a chance to counter the Russian propaganda in the last 32 years. Russia took over the embassy in India. Russia took over the cultural center because it was considered a natural leader of the post-Soviet republics.
Mhm.
And the problem is that nobody objected to that leadership because they were all, it is like you were one family and you broke down into 15 brothers separately. And one of the brothers said, I'm the head of the family. I will take care of all of you. And don't worry. So they just left to the elder brother, but they didn't know that the elder brother can change the standing later, which Russia did, because Russia is now truly a mafia state.
Here we are coming to the very important issue because we have one more question from our Facebook to Mr. Gosh. May I ask you? And you also had some comments, so you may speak about it. So for your question is about, maybe say today that this is a war between Russia and the West, and why should South Asian nations get involved?
Right. So, I mean, this is again very important to address. Firstly, am I audible now? Am I?
Yeah.
We can hear you well. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Good. No, this is an important issue to address. Now, this is actually a Russian narrative that this war is actually being fought between Russia and the West and against Western conspiracy to break apart Russia or some such thing. But the reality is that this is just propaganda, because before the full-scale invasion began in February 2022, there was no question, or rather, I would say, there was no impetus on the part of the West to include Ukraine in NATO. This was completely false. That that the West was looking to incorporate Ukraine into NATO before the invasion began. In fact, at that time, I've spoken to some Russia experts like Mark Galeotti and all, and they tell me that at that time the West had pretty much told NATO, the West had pretty much told Ukraine that NATO membership is not on the cards. Despite all that, the Russian regime decided to invade Ukraine. Shows that this is not about the expansion of NATO or any such thing. This is just the project of the Russian leadership, delusional project of the Russian leadership, which believes that Ukraine it doesn't have the right to exist. I mean, Putin repeated this recently in his interview with Tucker Carlson. Where he said that Ukraine is an artificial country, and it's a fiction. Ukraine is a fiction. So the Russian leadership actually, I would say, is delusional.
Mr. Gosh, you switched off your microphone.
Yeah.
Mr. Gosh.
I think you need to.
Mr. Gosh, I'm sorry. You switched off your microphone 1 minute ago.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Maybe a few sentences before. May you come back, please?
Okay. Basically, I was saying that like this is just Russian propaganda, because Russia itself has multiple problems, and the Russian leadership is essentially using this war to divert attention from those problems. Russia is facing huge depopulation. Its economy is in shambles. It has not been able to transition to a modern economy. It continues to rely on its natural resources and defense industry. So it is facing huge problems. In fact, in the far east of Russia, there have been reports for some years now that the Russian state does not even exist. There are Chinese farmers who are taking over Russian land. This is nothing. This war is nothing but a combination of the delusion of the Russian leadership and its necessity to divert attention from the real problems that that Russia and the Russian people are actually facing. So this was never about the West and NATO expansion. That is nonsense.
Thank you so much. And here we are coming to the next question. How important is South Asia for Ukraine after the end of the war? India often accused Ukraine that it never stood with India on Pakistan issue or nuclear issues, while India also didn't fully support Ukraine due to Russia. Do you see change in Ukraine's policy toward India and Indian policy towards Ukraine in future? I think this question is for all of experts. Who has an idea, please share.
Yeah. Can I answer?
Yes, sure, please.
So there are two things here. When you're talking about like the nuclear issue, you must remember that Ukraine is one of the nations that voluntarily gave up its nuclear arsenal. So it gave up its nuclear arsenal in exchange for security and sovereignty guarantees. So Ukraine, when you're talking about the nuclear issue and how in the past the Ukrainian government, the kind of position it has taken on the nuclear issue. So you must understand that Ukraine is coming from the perspective of denuclearization. It voluntarily gave up its nuclear weapons and arsenal, in exchange for security and sovereignty guarantees. So that aside, we also must take into account that the political history of Ukraine since the 1990s. Ukraine itself has evolved, and it has evolved tremendously. The Ukraine of today is nothing like the post-independence Ukraine of the 1990s. So there has been a political evolution in Ukraine itself, and today with the war, the government of Ukraine recognizes the need to reach out to South Asia, because South Asia and countries like India are today playing a big role at the global stage, which was not the case in the 1990s. We were nowhere near the kind of power that we are today. In the 1990s, India today is well on its way to becoming a $5 trillion economy very soon. We were nowhere near that mark in the 1990s. We didn't have that kind of voice. So we have evolved. Ukraine has also evolved. So obviously, some of these positions are also evolving, and it's a good thing that the Ukrainian government now is reaching out and is trying its best to make up for lost time and reach out to countries like India. And we should also take up on this opportunity, because as I said, like, the world is changing. We are going from let's say the post-Cold War order, which was created I think after the breakup of the USSR, and now we are going into another era where we have multipolarity, but there is a revisionist power in China which is rising and which is challenging the rules-based international order. Now, India and many of the South Asian countries have benefited from this rules-based international order. So it is in our interest to preserve this rules-based international order. But China and Russia in tow are trying to undermine this rules-based international order and rewrite the international rules of engagement. So this is something that, I think is not in India's favor or any of the South Asian nations' favor. And we should therefore take this opportunity to increase our partnership and relationship with countries like Ukraine.
Mr. Ghosh, thank you so much for remarks. Maybe Professor Olena want to add to it?
Yes, I would like to add something. Thank you so much. For the nuclear issue, it is very clear. Really, Ukraine maybe made a mistake. Who knows? It's under discussion. But we really gave up our nuclear weapons, and we did it voluntarily. So yes, we did not support both India and Pakistan with this issue, right? Then a lot of manipulations, I would say, and speculations about this relationship, which is again about the lack of information. Yes, Ukraine did not support India and also did not support Pakistan with Kashmir issue. The same as both India and Pakistan did not support Ukraine with Crimea issue, right? It's again the same approach, which is a neutral one. And it's only one case. We have a lot of such things, and I will support the same approach. Everything is possible. And my colleague Alina also mentioned it. We can manage our relations with both India and Pakistan because Ukraine was never against, for example, India's relationship with Russia, right? You mentioned that India had a lot of weapons and the other supplies from Russia, but at the same time, India had some contracts with Ukraine. And we also had contracts with Pakistan. Yes, it is possible. And the peace, the world is changing itself. And of course, we can manage all these things just for the future, for the good relationship. And for us, first of all, it's not about military cooperation. No. The South Asia is a huge market for Ukrainian food, first of all. And Ukraine became really a good food provider for both Pakistan and India, and also Bangladesh and other countries with our grain, with our oil, with our many other things, beans, for example, and we can continue with this. And a lot of the spheres of cooperation have been mentioned here. Everything is possible, why not? Ukraine really is a very tolerant nation, and we would like from our very beginning, since the independence era, we try to build this kind of cooperation with different countries in the world. Yes, as I mentioned from the very beginning of our conference today, we paid too much attention to the Western world. That was our mistake. But right now we try to do something to reach every country in global south as well. And actually our grain is still going to Africa, for example, right now during the war. I can see the next question just shortly, if I may. I would like to answer this also because it is about the Russia-Ukraine war and how can the international community play the role. I mentioned already that there is a good plan produced by Ukraine. This is the peace formula. How to stop the war. There are 10 points in this peace formula. Everyone can check it. And if South Asian countries will be volunteering to support even 2-3 points of this peace formula, it will be okay. We can start with something which is about nuclear security, environment, right, ecology, because Ukraine suffered a lot. And as I know, India already agreed to support these points of peace formula of Ukraine. And what is the mechanism? Again, this is the meeting. This is the global peace summit, which we are expecting to have maybe next month even, when the representatives of different countries, not only Ukraine and Western states, no, not at all. Our objective is to invite as more as possible global south as well. We'll participate and we'll discuss how to implement this formula. That is the mechanism.
I would like to add,
Yes, sir.
Doctor, that Ukraine is the only country in the world which voluntarily gave up all the nuclear weapons. So that is something to say. You just give up everything because in the promise that you are going to be protected. So the keepers of the promise are at fault, not Ukraine. And secondly, the food part, India imported around 100 liters of each oil that India imported, sunflower oil, 78% used to come from Ukraine. So every 100 bottles, 78 bottles were Ukrainian in India pre-war. And Ukraine is the only country which is a country of pre-war was 42 million. It was producing food for 600 million people. So basically, we have to keep those things in mind, and we have to support Ukraine because this is the main fact, and this is basically Russia is trying to just be a bully right now, and we as nations of the world, we should not let it bully Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ghosh, would you like to add to it? Because there's a question that, like, what role can India play in the ongoing crisis? Because what can be the role of international community, and can India play any role in diffusing the tension?
India can potentially be an interlocutor between. Sorry, excuse me. India can be an interlocutor between Ukraine and Russia, but we haven't reached that point as yet. That's my understanding. Because one thing we have to remember that in any negotiations, Ukraine has to be involved. Excuse me.
Just add shortly that India already involved in official negotiations. It is very much appreciated because India has been involved since the negotiations around the Zaporizhia nuclear plant. Since the first year of the war, we know that the Indians took place in these negotiations, and it was the negotiations with Russia, and the Russians have been asked to stop any blackmails with nuclear plant and nuclear weapons. And also India participated in negotiations with our Black Sea grain deal, which was again interrupted by Russia later. But for the first time, it was India together with Turkey and other countries who are very interested in this deal. So India could play and already played the role.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just got a bout of cough. So, yeah, as I was saying that, yeah, we can essentially be an interlocutor. But again, it depends on Ukraine, because this year, 2024, is not going to be an easy year for Ukraine. The situation with the war and the situation in the front line is very difficult and complex. Of course, Ukraine will try to liberate all the occupied territories that Russia has taken. However, it's not going to be easy. It depends on a lot of factors, including international support, including support from the United States. So it essentially, we have to see, like, what is Ukraine comfortable with? When is Ukraine comfortable to actually engage in negotiations to, at least have a ceasefire, or start the process of withdrawing from this war? And it is only when Ukraine is ready that India should be able to offer its good services as an interlocutor to speed up dialogue and facilitate an end to this war. But it completely depends on Ukraine. Nothing should be decided without Ukraine. That is for sure. That everything should involve the Ukrainian government. It should involve the will of the Ukrainian people, and it is only when they are comfortable that negotiations for a ceasefire or a permanent peace can be initiated. And it is at that point that India can, serve as an interlocutor for those negotiations, and India should, given its role, growing global role as an interlocutor and as a mediator between different countries.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We still have a few questions, but we are running out of time, so we should wrap it here. So, ladies and gentlemen, here we come to the end of today's discussion on Ukraine's relation with South Asia in the context of Russia-Ukraine war. We'd like to thank all our panelists, Professor Olena, Elena, Rudunil, and Mr. Army for their insights. We'd like to thank all our participants for their interesting questions and valuable time. Anastasia, over to you for the final words. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all experts that joined us today and gave us excellent remarks toward the relationships Ukraine and Asia. Also, I would like to express my gratitude to the audience and my gratitude to you, Zenais, for connecting us and for giving the opportunity, possibility to develop somehow in terms of public policy relationships with the countries of South Asia. I think that every voice is very important to hear. And this is a huge step for promoting and developing relationships in terms of public policy and etc. etc. So thank you so much for productive discussion. I believe it were fruitful, and I think that we will go on our sessions with your participation. And I'm strongly persuaded that it will have some benefits mutual for our countries also. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you so much.